English in southern England is the collective set of different dialects and accents of the English spoken in southern England, southeast England and the home counties. Southeast England and the home counties tend to reflect the interface between the London region and other regional accents. Affluent districts are associated with a modified received pronunciation accent, reflecting the traditional popularity with upper middle and upper class residents, which has spread throughout more social classes broadly in rural areas with commuting access to London. Less affluent areas have traditionally mainstream London accents that grade into southern rural outside urban areas. Regional dialect levelling in the southeast of England. Commentators report widespread homogenization in the southeast. The features present a levelling between the extremes of estuarine pronunciation and careful received pronunciation, and except where an intuitive, neutral parity position exists, they include reduced amount of H dropping, increased amount of TH fronting, goat fronting 2, RP variant in mouth, low back onset of price lowered, unrounded from, or raising of onset of face 2, fronting of goose 2, fronting of foot, lowering and backing of trap, backing of strut. Wells notes traditional aspects of rural southeastern speech as lengthened in trap words and use of or in mouth words. London accents are non-rhotic, that is, R occurs only before vowels. General characteristics of all major London accents include diphthongal realization of I and U, for example beat, boot, diphthongal realization of in open syllables, for example bore, pour, versus a monophthongal realization in closed syllables, for example board, pause. But the diphthong is retained before inflectional endings, so that board and pause often contrast with board and pause. Lengthening of a in words such as man, sad, bag, hand, split of a into two phonemes, a and a. See bad lad split, an allophone of e before dark l, namely, for example hall versus holy, but the is retained when the addition of a suffix turns the dark l clear, so that holy can contrast with holy. It is also common to hear young Londoners drop the from sentences related to going places. Sloane speak and raw Sloane speak, as Sloaney speech is spoken by the upper middle and upper classes. Ultra-localized in inner southwest and west London by a range of inhabitants of the very expensive private housing in and around Sloane Street and Sloane Square, Chelsea, Mayfair and alongside Marylebone High Street. The speakers of Sloaney are sometimes defined as Sloane Rangers. Levelling aspects of the speech of the young aristocracy were heightened in the early 1980s by the Princess Diana accent, and effect yet drew upon public school and historic vocabulary to form a distinct Sloane speak of the young and wealthy, soon dubbed Sloane Rangers. Here aristocrats' clipped received pronunciation was modified in this particular speech community as the young upper and upper middle classes, like Diana and contemporaries, increasingly settled as singles in the muesli belt round Sloane Square on the border of Belgravia and Chelsea. Chelsea's King's Road into Fulham, and even in expensive parts of Putney, Richmond, London, Wandsworth and Battersea. Sloaneys followed the 1960s fashion boom of King's Road and became lesser cultural icons for a time in fashion, as well as seeking out idiosyncratic cultural pursuits and language features. Whether affected a throwback to particular aristocratic shorthands include ja for yes, he's really nice, or shortened Hyperbole was for a period rife, but subject to influences from more demotic speech of the capital, particularly towards its fringes, reflecting national upper-class moves towards slightly less formal pronunciation, or indeed the middle dialect influence of slow speech. End of sentence. Glottal stop and final t-d sounds came into the speech of younger royalty, for instance in the speech of Diana and Prince Edward, and vocoids for l, as in miak, all juxtaposed against borrowed vocabulary from opposing dialects such as bog and yonks. To many middle-class Londoners, however, the often drawled pronunciation of the Sloane ranges was deemed as marked or affected, as the Queen's, so closely identified was with a particular social group. The Rara accent and dialect, named in 1982, coupled with the most obscure vocabulary, became Ra, synonymous with snobbery. The once trendy Ra concepts faded into fashion oblivion during the Cool Britannia decade, but in the late 2000s staged a comeback with slightly different, edgier, rougher forms continuing to develop. Sloane speak has grown edgier. Nancy Mitford's vocabulary was updated last year by a wealth of new words compiled into a dictionary by Olivia Stewart-Liberty and Peter York, but the past few months have yielded telling additions. Disrevelled refers to a Sloane's appearance after a heavy night at Bougie's. Horrible is a bad haircut. Squippy is the perpetual state of the Sloane. Then there's Jollop and Floordrobe, the place young Sloanes choose to store the clothes, i.e. on the floor. Oddly, there don't seem to be any jolly, Japish terms for the workplace, grocery shopping, and bill paying. Cockney. Cockney is an accent traditionally from the working classes of the areas immediately surrounding the City of London. It is characterized by a number of phonological differences from RP. The dental fricatives are replaced with labiodental, for example thing. The diphthong a is monophthongized to, for example south. H dropping, for example house. Replacement of in the middle or end of a word with a glottal stop, for example hit. Diphthong shift of to, and to, for example boy. Vocalization of to, for example people. Multicultural London English. Multicultural London English, colloquially called Blognia Jaffeakin, is a dialect of English that emerged in the late 20th century. It is spoken mainly by youths in inner London, Jamaican London. The speech of Jamaicans, or children of Jamaican parents, in London shows interesting combinations of the Jamaican accent with the London accent. For example, in Jamaican English, theta is replaced by, for example, both, ot. In London, word final t is realized as mentioned above. In Jamaican London speech, glottalization of t applies also to t from theta, for example both of them. Hypercorrections like for foot are also heard from Jamaicans. John C. Wells' dissertation, Jamaican Pronunciation in London, was published by the Philological Society in 1973. Essex is usually associated with estuary English, mainly in urban areas receiving an influx of East London migrants. The non-urban Essex accent, generally found in the north of the county, is more closely related to those of East Anglia. Residents of places within Essex such as Basildon, Billericay and Grays are more likely to have an accent similar to the traditional Cockney accent, due to the proximity to East London and East End migration to these areas since World War II. Estuary English is the name given to an accent that may informally be considered a compromise between Cockney and RP. It retains some aspects of Cockney, such as the vocalization of to and yod, coalescence in stress syllables and replacement of with in weak positions, or occasionally with d. East Hertfordshire. The East Hertfordshire accent traditionally spoken is akin to a native central North Essex rural accent. The largest towns in particular have the diverse sociolect variants of received pronunciation, and estuary English is seen in London, with smaller settlements tending towards the traditional dialects of variants of RP. West Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire. West Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire have R-coloured vowels, for instance. Here the established dialects make a distinction between the words father and father, FRTH, and F there. However, again in larger settlements are strong influences from London's estuary English, thanks to the influx of post-World War II migrants from across London. Hampshire is often missed in dialect definitions and placed on borderlines between southeast and West England. It is thought that Hampshire is generally a posh county using a Queen's English accent. However, use of estuary English accent is also very common in Hampshire. Contrary to popular belief, it has been found that very few people from Hampshire use a West Country dialect or accent. Due to urbanization, the numbers have steadily decreased, and it can be argued that Hampshire is a borderline county moving east linguistically. Portsmouth. The traditional Portsmouth dialect is an oddity and somewhat an isolate. It stands well apart both structurally and phonetically from all other local English varieties around it. The traditional origin story is that the dockyards attracted an influx of East Londoners at the turn of the 20th century, and the accent is based in dockyard slang. Though structurally it is based around the East London model, it has retained a lot of traditional Hampshire features. Whilst it follows the consonant rules of estuary English closely, the vowel sounds are quite different. The dialect is not a recent phenomenon, and can be heard in the speech of local people in the 90s. The surrounding accents geographically are quite different, and few contain as many of the estuary isms found in the Pompey dialect, and some of those may actually originate from Portsmouth, rather than estuary English. Bedfordshire. As with neighbouring Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire has a variety of accents. In the Luton, Dunstable urban area, the accent is similar to a London accent, and it is often mistaken as one. This is because of the overflow of Londoners and the subsequent generations in the area. The Lutonian accent is not as strong as an accent from Essex. The main difference between Lutonian and other Southern English accents is the pronunciation of the letter T. A good example is the pronunciation of the word Luton. To most natives, it is said like Lun. This difference was played upon in the Campari advert featuring Lorraine Chase. In mid-Bedfordshire, the more traditional accent of the area is still held, especially by those of an older generation, or in very remote areas. While in North Bedfordshire, especially near the border with Northamptonshire, it can be argued that the dialect is one which sounds more like East Midlands English. Bedford itself is linguistically diverse, reflecting the more varied demographics of the town. A typical Bedford accent is more similar to a Londonian Lute and a Dunstable accent, due largely to movement of people from these places to Bedford. Kent accents today are a cross between estuary English and received pronunciation, which both evolve over time and are becoming significantly more similar, where towards the former, accents have been strongly influenced by proximity to towns in the London gateway involved in heavy trades, fishing and repairs, and merchant sides of the Royal Navy, which was concentrated in Greenwich and Chatham. This corresponds to the name of the dialect, which refers to the Thames estuary. H-dropping is in general rare, as in the other home counties, but T-dropping, or substitution with a weaker vowel, is common. However, of particular note, one vowel usage is unique to West Kent, which is the realization of the phoneme Surrey. A traditional Surrey accent again has R-coloured vowels while being entirely non-rhotic. Estuary English is common throughout the county, particularly in the northern areas bordering on London, although many large settlements further south into Surrey, such as Guildford and Woking, share in variants of Estuary English. Furthest north into Surrey is the borough of Spelthorne, where the accent is indistinguishable from the London accent due to it sharing borders with the London boroughs of Hounslow, Richmond-upon-Thames and Hillingdon. Jaffaycan, also known as Tickenyer, less commonly Hurchat, is part accent part dialect, from around the mid-1990s, and influenced not only by British black urban culture, but by rap music. This variant is used by the youth of all races as a street patois with clear African-American, American English influences, but also Caribbean patterns such as AKS. The dialect is used mainly by young people, regardless of racial background. It can be heard in many parts of England, but especially around London. Rural South and West Country. This family of similar strongly rhotic accents, now perceived as rural, originally extended across much of southern England south of the broad Isinglos, but they are now most often found west of a line roughly from Shropshire via Oxfordshire. The shared characteristics have been caricatured as marmoset. They persist most strongly in areas that remained largely rural with a largely indigenous population, particularly the West Country. In many other areas they are declining because of RP and estuary accents moving to the area. For instance, strong Isle of Wight accents tend to be more prevalent in older speakers, as well as rhoticity. Here are common features of West County accents. The diphthong a, realized as or, sounding more like the diphthong in received pronunciation choice. The diphthong a, realized as, with a starting point close to the vowel in received pronunciation dress. The vowel, realized as an unrounded vowel, as in many forms of American English. In traditional West Country accents, the voiceless fricatives per second f, theta, are often voiced too, giving pronunciations like Somerset for Somerset, Varm for farm, Shore for shore, etc. In the Bristol area, a vowel at the end of a word is often followed by an intrusive dark L. Hence the old joke about the three Bristolian sisters, evil, idle, and normal. L is pronounced darkly where it is present too, which means that in Bristolian rendering, idea and ideal are homophones. H dropping in South Devon and Cornwall, berry aid for berry head. In traditional southern rural accents, the voiceless fricatives per second f, theta, always remain voiceless, which is the main difference from West Country accents. East Anglia. Features which can be found in East Anglian English include yaw dropping after all consonants. Beautiful may be pronounced, often represented as bootiful or beautiful, huge as, and so on. Absence of the long mid-merger between early modern English oat and the vowel of toe, moan, road. Boat may be realized as, so that boat may sound to outsiders like boot. Glottal stop frequent for t. The diphthong a, realized as, sounding very much like the diphthong in received pronunciation choice. The vowel, realized as an unrounded vowel, as in many forms of American English. Merger of the vowels of near and square, making chair and cheer homophones. East Anglian accents are generally non-rhotic. There are differences between and even within areas of East Anglia. The Norwich accent has distinguishing aspects from the Norfolk dialect that surrounds it, chiefly in the vowel sounds. The accents of Suffolk and Cambridgeshire are different from the Norfolk accent.